What's up, my name is Kristian, I'm 22 years old and I just finished the 2-day in-person workshop from Alex Hormozi in Las Vegas. Right now I'm filming this hook with this pool. It's actually not my pool, but we do around 15K a month with around 82% profit margins. I've been in business for 11 months and in this video I'm gonna walk through what I learned in the workshop, my biggest takeaways and the biggest learnings I had from the event. Let's get into it. So let's get started. First of all, I want to mention that the workshop was totally worth it. I got so extremely much value, but I also want to mention that I never felt so poor ever in my life before. The level of entrepreneurs in this room is crazy and the level of the team of Alex Hormozi is insane. But in this video, I'm going to cut it up into 4 parts. General big takeaways, my personal biggest takeaways, my takeaways from Alex Hormozi's part of the event, and lastly, and this is the reason this video is so long, I'm gonna go over my actual notes from the event. And this is basically more for me to have it documented. But if you're also a business owner, this is gonna be very tactical and probably a bit boring for many of you. So I would for sure stick around from the start. And if you're very interested, keep watching until the end. Let's jump into it. So general big takeaways. First of all, I wanna mention that being in this room and mostly around the leaders of acquisition.com was quite insane experience. And I realized that the super rich people are actually human beings, including Alex. And this might sound weird, but when you look at YouTube, it's easy to think, yeah, they know what they're talking about, but they're different. But when you actually talk to them, you realize that they are actually just human beings. They just work longer than you, they work harder than you and smarter, but actually they are human too, and they also started from zero at some point. Next, and this is a bit tactical, but in your business, there's basically always just one constraint. And often the constraint is something that you really don't want to work on. It's often very painful, but that goes on to number 3. The highest ROI activity is always working on the biggest constraint. And this is something that I noticed they mentioned over and over and over again. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons of Alex Hormozi's big success is because he ruthlessly focuses on the biggest constraint all the time. Even if the task is painful, he still focuses on it. And all the leaders that we talked to, that before they worked at acquisition.com, they also were business owners, and many of them exited for multiple tens of millions of dollars. The highest ROI activity is always working on the biggest constraint, and you just gotta identify it, fix it, then identify the next biggest constraint and fix that. And this is often very painful, but it's the highest ROI activity we as entrepreneurs can do. Number 4, they actually just use violence and they just do more than everyone else. So if you've been watching Alex Hormozi, you probably can agree that he always talks about doing more, spending more on ads, doing more interviews to hiring, doing more sales calls. Most of the time he always talks about doing more, but watching it in real life and watching how his team deals with this, they actually just use violence, they actually just do more. And I use the word violence because that is the word that I noted down in my book multiple times. And I'll give you an example. In the event, we talked about hiring and hiring employees and getting good employees. And what they told us was that you should aim for doing 25 interviews per role. Not 2 interviews, not 5 interviews, but 25 interviews. And this is a lot. Example number 2. And I hope it's okay I mention his name, but Ed. And he was such a great guy. But we had a small talk about ads. And he mentioned that when he had a business, he did 25 new ads every single week. Not for 1 week, not for 2 weeks, but for multiple months, multiple years. 25 new ads every single week. The next week, he turned off the ads that didn't work. He continued running the ads that worked, and then 25 new ads. And just when I think about my situation, I probably make around 1 ad a month. So it's not like 2 times, 5 times more. It's actually 100 times more. And Hormozi talks about this all the time, but this was the first time it really hit me. They actually do 100 times more, 1,000 times more than what I do. And in third example, there was this one guy that was spending, I think, around $1,000 to $2,000 a day on ads. And he couldn't scale past, I think it was like $5 or $10 million. And they walked through the math and the math made sense. And then they just asked, why don't you spend $10,000 a day on ads? And it's just such a mind blown because it's such a high number. But if the math makes sense, then you should do it. If you spend $10,000 a day and you get a 3 or 4 times return, why don't you spend $10,000 a day, $20,000 a day? If the math makes sense, you should do it. Of course, if the math doesn't make sense, you should think about another thing. Most problems can be solved with volume. Or as I noted, and the word they sometimes use, is just violence, is just work. And number 5, and this was actually a big topic throughout the whole workshop, and that is that the business is a reflection of the entrepreneur. Basically, everything is the entrepreneur's fault. If your marketing is bad, it's your fault. If the sales is bad, it's your fault. If all your employees quit early or they don't do their job, it's your fault. If you can't attract A players, it's your fault. And basically the half of the first day was purely dedicated to talking about this subject. The how to make yourself into a great entrepreneur. Because the business is a reflection of the entrepreneur. Even if you don't do every single task in your business, it's still your business. And probably more than we realize, we impact even small departments or small tasks more than we think. Now I want to go over into my personal biggest takeaways. And just some context, in my business, we're basically 2 people working full time. And we have 1 freelancer that works maybe 30-40%. So when I talk about hiring A players and all these things, in no way, shape or form am I saying that I am doing this. I'm just saying this is my biggest takeaway and it's something that I'm gonna try and implement going forward in my entrepreneurial career. But let's talk about my biggest takeaways. So first of all, it's similar to my first point, but it's actually possible to get rich. They just done it longer and smarter than you. And after talking to his employees and his leaders and also all the other entrepreneurs in the room that were doing 2 times, 5 times, 10 times, 100 times more than me, first of all, after talking to them, I realized that it's actually possible. These people are people, they started from zero. But also when I talked to them and asked like, how long have you been in business? How much do you work? Etc, etc. Most of them had been in business for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And they work 6-7 days a week, every single day, every single week, for multiple years. So yes, of course we can try and do all these things, work harder to progress faster. But also for me, I've been in business for 11 months and things take time. It's normal that I am not a multimillionaire in under a year with no experience, but often I compare myself to people that done business for multiple years. And the painful thing to think about is that things just take time. It takes years to build something big and it's hard work all the time, but also that means that it's actually possible and these people are not some type of aliens or gods or anything like that. They're just human beings. They work hard, they're consistent over a long period of time. Not 6 months, not 1 year, multiple years. And over to the next point. Having a great product is really important. And I'm gonna tell a story here. And I had a conversation with Ed, which I think is the chief operator of the workshop department. But again, he was super great, super appreciate his time and our conversation. And basically I explained my problems and he asked me a simple question. Do you like sales? And I was like a bit hesitant. And then he asked like, why don't you like sales? And I think he in some way could read through my mind. But basically he said to me, your product is not good enough. If your product would be super great, you would not have any problems doing sales calls. You would actually enjoy trying to sell your product. And if your customer doesn't respond on your phone, you would call them again because you know your product will for sure help them and all the other product is not as good as yours. And then he said to me, it's 100 hours every single month working on the product, making the product real good before we start scaling and making more sales every month. And this really hit me because yes, I do think we have a good product. Many of our clients do get results, but deep inside, I know for sure we can do much better. I can work more on the product. I can give more attention to my clients. And just watching how confident they were in their product was really motivating. Because if you have a good product, you will call 2 times, you will call 3 times, you will follow up because you know they will get results. And also, I will try and quote Alex Hormozi on this, but if you have a great product, you will not have a problem getting customers. because your customers will refer other customers. And the way to think about this is, if you watched a really, really good movie, the way you talk about this movie to your friends is totally different than if the movie is mid. Your persuasion skills will go through the roof. You will say like, hey bro, you actually have to watch this movie. It's the best movie I've ever watched. You have to watch it. And you speak with so much confidence, and this confidence cannot be faked. Of course, there are maybe psychopaths out there, but for most people, if you really believe in your product, you will talk completely different about it. And your customers will too. And basically that goes over point 3 also, but I want to mention that they talked a lot about VSLs, and I realized the power of a VSL because that's actually how they sold me. They made sure I watched the VSL, and on the call they asked me, did you watch the VSL? And yes, I did watch the VSL, and it was really good. And basically I was already sold. We just had to figure out the logistical things on the call. So that was a big takeaway for me. Using VSLs more often, making them better, and using them every single time, not sometimes, but every single time. And lastly, and this is actually a pretty big thing, especially for me, is to outsource everything that is not revenue generating or core to your business, for example, product. So for me, sometimes I still do like very small, useless tasks. For example, editing recordings of our live calls, uploading it into Skool, waiting for it to upload, and then posting it. Maybe this only takes 1, 2, 3 hours a week, but it's completely waste of time, and you should outsource these type of tasks as quick as you can. Even if it takes little time, you still use mental energy thinking about it, and it's also hours you could do other stuff with. So outsourcing everything that is not revenue generating was a big thing that I realized at the event, that I need to do more and more and more. And basically, at the logical extreme, if you didn't have to do anything else than only revenue generating activities, your business would probably grow. Alright, over to my biggest takeaways from Alex Hormozi's part of the event. So Alex Hormozi in my event did around 2 hours in front of everyone. First he did a talk, and then 5 people asked him a Q&A questions. And seeing him in real life, walking through and thinking through how to solve these people's problems, it was super clear to me that he really actually 100% fixes most problems with more. It goes back to the same thing. It's just violence. And it actually hits so much different watching him in real life talk about this than if you watch him on YouTube. So there were 5 guys asking him a question about his business, and 4 out of the 5 guys, it was just more. There was, for example, this one company, I think it was a lawyer firm, and he was doing multiple millions or tens of millions a year, but his constraint was getting lawyers, more A-player lawyers. And then Hormozi went through the math. How much do you spend to get a lawyer? How much money do you get from a lawyer? And he realized that he spent $60,000 on getting a lawyer, but a lawyer generated him $800,000 a year in gross profit. So if you know that you can spend $60,000, even if $60,000 is a lot for one employee, but if that employee makes you $800,000 gross profit, why are you not spending $300,000 every month on trying to get new employees? And this was the same with 4 out of 5 people. The last guy, it was a bit different. So you hear all the time talk about more, better, new. And one of the guys, it was to do a little bit different and tweak the model a little bit. But most times he fixes most problems with violence, is just doing the work. And then in his talk, he talked about mental toughness. So Alex Hormozi's mother died 4 days before the event. So this was super top of mind for him. And my condolences to him and his family. But it was super interesting to see and hear and how he thinks through mental toughness. And basically he had a framework that could be measured. And I'm not gonna recap all his presentation, but in short, if we have 2 extremes, one super mentally tough person and one super weak mental tough person, the weaker person will get affected by every single small detail. So maybe his baseline is here, one small little shitty thing happens and he just starts taking meth every single day, and he stops working out, and he just doesn't do anything, and he keeps on going downward and downward and downward, and he basically never recovers. And maybe after a long period of time he recovers, but he recovers lower than baseline. So he started here, he went into dark, deep depression, started doing drugs, and it took a long time to recover, and he recovered lower than he started. And the other extreme, you have a guy that all small things doesn't bother him. He just keeps going, and maybe something extremely bad happens. In this example for Alex Hormozi, maybe he has a small little dip, but he quickly realized that he's on a way down, and he quickly shoots up, and he also doesn't shoot up at the same level. He shoots higher, and his mental toughness and his state of being is higher than he was before. So he uses the shitty situation to become a better person, and he does not let this affect him and go downwards in a negative spiral. So it's very, very helpful to think through that mental toughness can actually be measured. Do you change your behavior? How long do you change your behavior? And at what baseline do you recover after the bad thing happened? And lastly, and this part might be a little long and boring for some people, but I will go over my actual notes that I took there and then at the event. And some of these are very tactical, and some of these are also a bit for the mentality part. So firstly, the structure was that it was 6 of the leaders at acquisition.com, and we were a group of 10 people sitting around, and the leader came. It was 30 minutes, and then another leader came to our group, and we got to ask them a question, and then another leader came, and we got to talk to everyone in groups of 10 people. And I think I asked around 5 questions, but most of the times the question that other people asked was also related to me. So let's go over the first page, and this was with a guy named Preston, and he was the head of marketing at acquisition.com. So for marketing, a big framework to think about is that they actually use show, not tell. So if you can show what your product does, and instead of telling, this will convert better than if you just tell. Second of all, they many times ads that use pain convert better than promises dream outcome. Of course, both work, but they notice that pain also works sometimes even better. And also, I noted that you should also talk about outcome, so not always talk about pain, but always talk about the outcome, not the journey. So basically, don't talk about the plane flight, talk about the vacation. Talk about Bali, not waiting to get your visa done or sitting in between 2 random people at the flight. Also, other than that, we talked a lot about testimonials. So testimonials from your customers very often convert much higher than if you as a CEO makes the ad. And then we also talked a lot about hooks, and what we basically talked about is that hooks are very random, and you don't really know why one hook works and why another hook works. Sometimes it can be completely random. Just taking off your shirt can make a better hook than if you have your shirt on. It doesn't always need to make sense, and that's also why they test the hooks a lot. I think it was around 70 to 80% of their effort is in the first 5 to 10 seconds of the ad. And then this is actually not super related to marketing, but if you have one client that outperforms all of your other clients, you should ask them what they do on a daily basis, what strategies they use to get better results, and you should make that the new standard for all your clients. And of course, I've noted down, test a lot, volume negates luck. Right, let's go to the next one. And this was with Ed, the head of workshop operations. I think super great guy. And here, this is probably the guy that I took most notes from, and I will not go over all of them. I will go over the most important ones. Number 1, as a business owner, $0 to $1 million, basically your model is broken. You just have to do more. And also fix your model. From 1 to 3 million, oftentimes the entrepreneur gets distracted, so this is a very big bottleneck at this level. From 3 to 10 million, it's basically people, hiring better people, getting A players, and 10 million plus, you need to get leaders. You need a brand to attract extremely talented leaders. So we talked a lot about like AI and how AI is going to commoditize a lot of different businesses, a lot of different jobs, and the big differentiator is going to be brand. And even if you don't have a lot to talk about, for example, me, I don't have $1 million business, I don't have multiple hundreds of employees, but just document your journey and build a brand, because this will be your differentiator in the long run. And here is the first violence. So work double shifts, violence with ads and organic. So just post more organic than you already do, a lot more ads, like 25 ads new every week. Like, it's just violence. The more you post, the better. Of course, get feedback, try and make it better. And then we talked a lot about like this one test that they do. So you basically set a timer for 15 minutes, and every time the timer goes off, you stop what you do, you write a little note about what you did these 15 minutes, and then you continue. And you do this for a full working week, and at the end of the week, you can see where your time goes. And then you outsource everything that is not revenue generating or core to your business, for example, product. And also, you probably noticed that you waste a lot of time. You have to write down that you were on your phone for 50 minutes. And then you realize if what you do is important, but also how much you actually work or how much you're procrastinating. And this was one big thing. Competition is not real. Share everything. And of course, you see Alex Hormozi does this at the biggest scale. He does not hold back. He gives away everything he knows in his free content, in his free books, in his free courses. He gives away absolutely everything. And you should not be afraid of giving away the secrets. Give them away, because you will make more money and you will get more customers from doing this, not less. And then this is a bit tactical. Now, these days, the algorithm is the targeting. So if you make some content for example, people that want to learn Norwegian are going to get your content. You don't need to add hashtags. You need to do custom this or that. Just make your content for your audience, and the algorithm will do the targeting for you. And post your video that does the best more times. If you post it once, you can post it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And if you're making ads, basically just take your best performing organic ads, add a CTA in the organic video, and run that as an ad. Because then you know people will watch the ad and get value from the ad because it's already tested organically. And also, if you use Instagram, repost posts that did well and repost them also as trials. And that is probably the biggest takeaways. There are for sure more, but I will not waste more time. Let's go over to the next guy. And the next guy is a gentleman called Tim. Great guy, got super much value from him. I don't 100% completely remember what his role was, but I know before acquisition.com he sold an agency for a lot of money. He didn't say how much, but a lot. So here are my notes from him. The first thing I noted is working on the wrong stuff is often worse than doing nothing. And then he walked through how he thinks through making decisions, and he used something called ICE. So basically it's impact, confidence, and ease. So how much impact is going to have, how much confidence do you have that this will have this impact, and how easy is it to implement. If you have a decision that has all these 3 things, you should make the decision. But let's say you have a decision that has a high impact. You are extremely confident that it will have this impact, but it's super hard to do. Think building a rocket ship and landing it on Mars. Of course, if I could do this, that would make me a billionaire. But is it higher likelihood that I will make more money from just doing what I do now and doing it better, or changing my path and building a rocket ship and landing on Mars? Maybe not the best decision. So you should weigh it on these 3 factors. And then nail it before you scale it, or nail it then scale it. So fix your model and then scale. And this goes back to my problem that I should fix my product and make it really, really good. Not only decent, but make it real good. Make the model solid and then scale it. And then we talked a bit about hiring. So you should hire sometimes for the smallest and easiest thing so you can get your time back. So for me, I could decide from hiring a teacher, or I could decide hiring somebody that could take off some of the low value work that I do, and then you should just hire for the easier opportunity and then later hire for the more advanced role. And also I noted hand off basic things ASAP. So the fact that I still sometimes post my recordings myself is kind of stupid. I should get that out of the way ASAP. Let's go over to the next person. This was the head of strategy, and here I basically noted a lot of things that we already went through. So identify your biggest bottleneck and your biggest opportunity for growth and work on that. And also, this was a big thing for me, the market will guide you. Just run and then take the next step. So for me, I was asking like, okay, maybe what should I do after 1 or 2 years? Maybe we hit our revenue goal. And he basically said, it doesn't matter. Fix your problems right now and get there, and then you will have the context to decide. You don't need to think about what are you gonna do in 2 years, because that you cannot predict, but you can predict what you can do today or tomorrow or this week and next week. And then follow up regularly, especially if you're B2B, just follow up regularly, and they actually give gifts to the people that they follow up with. So they use actual real money, around 2 to 3 to 5% of the value of the order they use as gifts to follow up with clients and make them top of mind for the clients. And then let's go over to the next guy. This is also head of strategy, and this is kind of a funny one, but every single guy that I talked about right now, every single employee and including Alex Hormozi that I saw was jacked. So I noted down here, become jacked. And of course, maybe this will make more money, maybe not, but it was kind of cool to see that every single guy there was super fit. They were bigger than everyone, they had muscles, they were lean, and they were healthy men that were jacked. But this is about my notes from Ned. So we talked a lot about processes and people, and basically you should nail down your processes and then getting people so it's easy for the people to follow the processes. He also mentioned that culture is what you accept or not accept. So this is culture. If somebody comes late, do you accept it or do you not accept it? That is the culture. And then we talked about interviewing people to hiring people, and he said that you should have something that he called technical interviews. So not only have the interview, test them in the interview. Try and coach them and see if they are coachable on the interview before hiring them. Because if you try to coach them on the interview and they are not accepting it, they will not be a good fit. But if they take feedback right away on the interview, it's a good chance they could be a good fit. Also, right now with AI, in-person things and also authentic things. So just being a human being and not all this over edited stuff was a prediction they had would be more and more important and would be a big differentiator for a lot of people. And then we talked a lot about like optimization of your time. So time and cost. What do I use my time on? And how can I replace this as fast as possible? And also, if you can change it with something that you like to do, this is a big plus because you will work more if you like it than if you don't like it. And this was very interesting. He said that efficiency is cheaper than hiring. Process over people. So you having an efficient process is even cheaper than just hiring very fast, and maybe having people waste time or not being productive is better to have an efficient process than to overhire. And this went back to my problem that I should fix my product, fix my process before hiring and trying to sell more and more a month. Fix my product, fix the process, and then scale. Nail it before you scale it. All right, and let's go over to the last person. This was one of my favorite, and this was with Benson, the head of sales. So here we talked a lot about VSL, and I will explain how they think through VSLs, or what I took notes about from their process of doing VSL. So they basically use what they call close framework, and the VSL should be around 5 to 7 minutes, and the close stand for C, clarify who it is for. Use pain and stories. And then L stands for layout offer. And something that was really helpful here was to use a frame, for example, What if your business only grew with 20% the next year after attending this workshop? Would it be worth it? Or let's say you teach language. What if you only could speak like the basic phrases, but you actually could speak the basic phrases? Would it be worth it? So basically play out the lowest value thing that could happen. And that was something they used in VSLs. Because one thing is to imagine the biggest, highest outcome, but if you're okay with the lowest outcome, then everything above is just a plus. And then O stands for overcome objections, and S stands for stack proof, data and testimonials. So show your proof, show, don't tell, have client testimonial videos, have data of how many of your customers get results. This is more trustworthy than anything you can say with your mouth. And then he talked a lot about follow-ups, that they get a lot of sales in follow-ups. Follow-up is probably around 20 to 30% of sales. So if you neglect follow-up, which is something that I sometimes do, you are losing out on a lot of money. And lastly, an E stands for easy, and here you should overcome fears with maybe different guarantees or overcoming other objections, and then make a very easy CTA. And then after that, we basically went through some objection handling, some of the words or phrases they use. If it's uncertainty, what are you afraid of happening? Or what are you afraid of? And then if it's a price objection, you can ask, price aside, is this for you? And he always said that you should always be on the back foot. You should not push, you should be on your back foot and just ask questions. And then if it's a timing issue, again, be on your back foot. Maybe someone says, right now is a busy time. You can ask, okay, but what if it wasn't busy? Do you think this would be for you? And if they say, yeah, this would be for me, but I'm just busy right now, then they confirm that they actually want this. And then you ask, are you certain that you want it? And if they still say yes, then it's just a logistical problem. Maybe you get some payment down now and you set them up to start when the time is actually better. But most times, timing is actually just an objection or a smoke and mirror for other objections. And that's why they asked, would you do it if it would be a better time for you? And are you certain? And over to some tactics here. If you run ads, lead form on Facebook, you often get lower quality leads. You maybe get more leads, but more times than not, the leads are very low quality. And then if you're targeting on Meta, the messaging is your targeting. Who you are speaking to is the targeting. It will target much more better than any button clicked or audience will do. And this was a nice thing to think about. And he called it the God complex. So basically, if you get a lead that obviously looks like a shit lead, you should still take the call and use it as practice. And for me, I'll tell you a story. Many times I've been very surprised of people that bought and people that didn't buy. Because we use landing page with VSL and form, also how they recommended at the workshop, because you often get much more higher lead quality. But in the form, some guy could say that their pain, that their problem was like everything, so they could list out their problems, and he chose everything. He said he was ready to start right away. He said he wanted all the help he could. But on the call, when he figures out that it costs money, he's out. But on the other side, we also sell in 2 different countries. One country is a bit richer than the other one. And when I get a lead from the country that most of the times the people there have less money, our program on average is an average month of salary for them. So it's a lot of money for learning a language. And on these calls, oftentimes because I know that they have less money, I am often so on the back foot and I just take the call for fun. Oftentimes these people actually close. So I'm often surprised of who closes and not. Maybe it's because the way I sell is different, because I have absolutely no expectation. But also either way, if they wouldn't buy, you practice sales, and this is what he called God complex. You should take calls even if from the form the lead looks very low quality. And then again on VSL, make sure the person watches the VSL, remind him multiple times through text if he saw the VSL, and in the start of the sales call, ask them if they saw the VSL. If not, make him watch the VSL in the call, go grab a coffee, put the VSL on for him. Don't take a call until they watch the VSL. And also, getting a lot of reviews decommoditizes your business. So just look at the one example. Would you go to a restaurant and pay $20 more if the restaurant had 50,000 reviews compared to another restaurant that was a bit cheaper but had 2 reviews? Many of us would probably go to the $50,000 review. And lastly, this was not a round table, but it was a talk where I got to ask Jacob, another sales director, a question. If you're an OG Alex fan, you know who Jacob Hopkins is. If not, no worries. But basically he talked about values, and values is what I do. So if I'm the entrepreneur, the values of the company I have to do. It's very easy to say, show up on time, work hard. But if you as a leader don't do it, the values don't mean nothing. Also, bad leads are practice, the same as I mentioned earlier. And he talked a lot about praising all wins and praise them quick. It's better to give a little candy right away if somebody does something good than wait 3 days and give them a $100 gift card. The candy right away reinforces much more than a reward that's delayed, even if the reward is bigger. And also recognize people, say their name, say hello, go fist bump everyone at the start of the day. Recognize your people and they will want to work harder for you. And lastly, I probably mentioned most of this earlier in the video, but these are my live notes from Alex Hormozi's talk. What I wrote down is, there's only one constraint, and then identify it and fix it. The highest leverage task is working on one constraint at a time. So fix the constraint and then go to the next one. Also, what he talked a lot about is that we, the people that came to the workshop, probably has pages of notes as I do, but what you need to do is find your priorities. It should be around 1 to 3, maximum 5 priorities out of everything we learned. And basically, if you don't change your behavior, you've learned nothing. So prioritize what you're gonna change about what you're gonna do, and then you're gonna learn and grow. And then I noted down, just do more, it's just violence. So that came from his Q&A session. It's just violence, it's just more work. It's more work than you probably can even think about. It's 10 times more, it's 100 times more, it's a lot more volume. And also, business is about the CEO. The CEO is the reflection of the business. And lastly, mental toughness. How big and how much does one bad thing affect you? And how quick can you get back to normal behavior or even better behavior than you did before a bad thing happened? And that's basically it for this video. This was in a bigger picture, all my notes. I know the video was a bit long. If you stick around to the end, I appreciate it so much. This is the cool cup that I got for participating. And if you're considering going yourself, I highly recommend it. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.